Ask the Mayor, your chance to ask the Mayor of Weymouth, Bob Hedlund, questions about the town of Weymouth and or anything else that you have concerns about. Ask the Mayor is pre-recorded. And now, here's Bob Hedlund.
And welcome back again, friends, neighbors, residents of the great town of Weymouth, Massachusetts. I'm Jim Melody, your citizen advocate, introducing and welcoming you again to an episode of Ask the Mayor, featuring our Mayor, Bob Hedlund. About 3/4 of the way through of his inaugural year. Mayor, how you doing so far?
Great, Jim, and welcome viewers for another episode. And you left out in your intro our mascot. Don't forget him.
Which was literally the first thing I looked for when we walked in the door. Jeff Cummings is our able and capable part of the production staff, and he had already posted it before we walked in. So yes, did we come up with an official nickname? I think, did we have a contest?
We asked people. Actually, we should reiterate that if people want to come up with a nickname for
And
him.
of course, anytime anybody wants to reach out to ask Mayor Bob a question, it's that simple. Please just type into your browser, askmayorbob@gmail.com, and we'll get the questions humming and straight to the mayor. There's actually a plethora, a variety. There's almost an abundance of questions.
I think before we get into the questions, I should give the viewers a little bit of a little insight into the show. Our citizen advocate / inquisitor, before we went on camera just now, literally seconds before we went on camera, is complaining about his title.
I complain may be a strong word, but we would try to figure it out.
Questioning his title. Would you like to explain to the viewers?
Well, what I said, I'm not really an advocate per se, because I'm not really retaining or holding on to a particular issue. I'm more of just the conduit to the citizens'
He's holding his fire.
issues.
He wants to unload on me with some questions, and I said he's welcome to do so. He said before we went on, I'm not really a citizen advocate. I feel lately more like a reader.
Well, and one of the reasons in particular was, anecdotally, as our show continues to skyrocket in popularity, the local ratings, have you seen them? They're through the roof. Right. And as we wander the streets of Weymouth, we constantly bump into our neighbors and friends, and people ask me a variety of questions if I could ask Bob, as opposed to typing and reaching out through askmayorbob@gmail.com.
And what is the most frequent question you get?
What seems to be in the news, in particular over the course of the last couple of weeks, is the attention Southfield's been getting, or I'm sorry, Union Point. It's been getting from our town.
And I think we have, you mentioned that there's a question in there about that.
In particular, there are two.
Forget what the people tell you they want to ask. What is the burning issue that you have?
Well, I think it's connected to that question, because I know everyone in this town for the past at least half a dozen years have been counting on the commercial development down in that space to help fund the variety of financial needs that the town has.
Folks, that wasn't the answer I expected, because he was grousing about his cable service provider before we went on.
We were talking about our host.
We may get into that. Yes. So let's get to the questions.
Well, please allow me to answer this question, because you had a decent answer, and I think it is on the hearts and minds of our friends and neighbors. In the past 2 weeks, we've seen, again, the governor was visiting down at Union Point. It's at a $30 million road extension that's going to extend the Delahunt Parkway from its current position all the way out to Route 18. We've also seen in the last couple of weeks, you've authorized the extended use of additional water for that complex.
Not yet.
Sorry, it's in development. And so all of these construction initiatives are all offered to the residents and citizens under the auspices of it's going to help spur commercial development. This is what we need to bring that critical and crucial commercial development to our town. And my question to you is, I know in the past development contracts, or as I follow it through the news like everyone else, there was specific contractual commitments that operator and owner of that space had to make as far as that commercial endeavor is concerned. But right now, all we see down there is residential, and it looks like it's plans for more residential.
It's a very good question, you have a good recollection.
Yeah,
that was in the original enabling legislation. It carried over when we redid the enabling legislation a couple of years ago. But because of the way that the real estate market is, the new developers who have taken over as the master developers, L-Star Corporation, came to the town and wanted to change that schedule, if you will, and went through actually, it was twofold. There was a rezoning effort too, and in addition to changing the timeline, because it was set before that you had to do X amount of commercial to allow X number of residential to be built. They asked for relief from that, which was granted, but subsequently they've actually changed the zoning and want to do a lot more commercial if need be. And today, and we can get into this during the show, we had news publicized, or yesterday actually, that we've landed our first major commercial tenant, which we had a meeting earlier today in this office with the CEO of that company who came in from the Netherlands. It's the second meeting we've had directly with him and staff. We've had a number of meetings with his other staff, but that portends good things for Weymouth, and hopefully that's going to lead to other commercial tenants up there. But we should probably get into some of the questions, because I'm assuming, because you mentioned that we have a Southfield related question, so we can, Union Point. We need a money jar. I pay a fine every time I mention Southfield.
We'll get there at one point, but just finally, Ann, to close the door on that, first of all, congratulations on to our friends at Union Point who signed that tenant. Number two is there is a formal contractual component to the current agreement that there is a mandatory commercial piece that will be developed down there. It's not all residential at their whim.
Yeah, and yes.
Okay.
The short answer.
Excellent.
Yes.
Dynamite. So good news for everybody, it looks like. All right, moving into the questions as they relate to a different part of town. Tim Cronin wrote in to Mayor Bob. Bob, do you feel that the local civic associations, NWCA, EWNA, et cetera, benefit the town? And do you see any way that the town could help to strengthen them?
They do benefit the town in many, many ways. The volunteer activities that get done through those civic organizations, they bring people in kind of to the fold, and that leads to involvement in some of the town activities, whether it be our town-wide cleanup day. We've got the great pumpkin giveaway coming up, and all of the town organizations, nonprofits, civic organizations set up there. It's one of the primary fundraising tools of the year for them. The problem that I see, and I just met Mr. Cronin recently, actually. He's somewhat younger than I am. The problem that I see after having been around a while is that the amount of people involved in civic organizations has declined through the years, which is unfortunate. And we had a number, when I first ran for office in this town, a number of very active civic organizations, from the East Weymouth Neighborhood Association to Pond Plain Civic Association, and North Weymouth Civic Association, Homestead Landing, probably leaving out a couple.
Sure.
Some of those remain active, and unfortunately some of those have somewhat withered away. So they provide a tremendous amount of good. Is there a way for the town to help? Yeah, we're trying to do whatever we can do to help. We're going to have a regular meeting period scheduled with those organizations. I know that I was invited to speak to one group, one of the civic organizations I mentioned, and it was just going to be with the executive board of the group. And I said, well, why not open it up? I said, not only to you, but if I'm going to be speaking, invite all your members. In fact, make it a open meeting for any town people that want to go. It may provide some membership. So they're invaluable. In some cases, they're in decline, which is unfortunate. We'd like to reverse that trend. But I think it parallels what we see generally in society with a lack of civic engagement across the board, which is unfortunate.
I was surprised, and as you referenced the variety of civic groups that are in town, there's so many more than I think folks realize, actually, and there's so many different neighborhoods that are defined in Weymouth, and from time to time we see them on the street doing their different work, and all the work they do is fantastic, needless to say, and the more that they do for the town, I think the more we come together as a community. So I think they're doing, those who are involved, we say thanks, and I think it also extends out to the Boy Scouts and the church groups and so on and so forth. There's so many different ways to get involved in the town.
What would be good? We should probably do this, guys. Take this back in the info zone on WETC. Maybe we could highlight the different civic organizations with the contact information, bring in each of the directors, current presidents, what have you, and do a quick blip with them, or we could, maybe devote a half hour to that and, see if we can generate a little more interest amongst our citizenry to reach out to those groups and participate.
I think if people get more awareness as to where these opportunities are, I think we'd see a stronger participation.
Okay.
You're right. I think just identifying them is probably the best place to start. And our WETC folks are waving thumbs up, so that looks like we're moving forward on that one. All right, well, as a matter of fact, the shoe was fitting right away. We referenced there was a few Union Point questions, and here's another one. This one came in anonymously. Will we have any water left after the new agreement with the air-based people who, again, this agreement is not officially signed. This is in development?
So what was this?
So the essential question is, will we have any water left after the new agreement, with the air-based people who are the Union Point folks, obviously?
Yeah, one of the factors in pushing for the new agreement is to finally arrive at a ultimate solution to the water problem, a final solution, which doesn't exist right now. Currently, L-Star and Union Point are operating under a interim agreement that was signed by a predecessor of mine that's been in place for a while now, that allows the Union Point development access to 245,000 gallons a day, excuse me. The current usage there is right now, it fluctuates, but averaging over the last number of months about 75,000 gallons a day. So they're already entitled to much more legally than they're using. The problem is, as now there's interest in that site, and more importantly commercial interest, for the developers of the base to market sites. In many cases they have to demonstrate to prospective tenants the long-term viability of providing the right kind of infrastructure, which includes water and sewer, to those sites. So if you're a prospective tenant, like the example we have now with the Dutch company that was publicized yesterday coming in, they need to see legally that there's going to be water provided. Yeah. So the amount that will be upped in the interim process on paper is $600,000 gallons a day.
So just up from 450 to 600,000?
From 245 to 600.
Right, that's all right.
Remembering that the current usage is 75,000.
Right, sure.
So it's unlikely that in that, well, let me explain further, that also in that agreement, there's a requirement that and this is a draft agreement, it's not signed yet, was approved by the Southfield Redevelopment Authority Board, but we're actually making some changes to that, so we'll be going back before them at some point. In the agreement, there are strict timelines. For instance, they have to have the new permanent water solution designed within a year from the time we signed the agreement. They have to actually be hooked up to MWRA within 5 years, and the faucet's actually turned on. One of the safeguards that's built into that agreement, or that draft agreement, is that the mayor of Weymouth will have, myself or a successor, will have the power to reject any new development proposals on the base if we feel that they're not on a pace to hit those construction timelines within that 5-year window laid out in the agreement.
Oh, dynamite.
So the likelihood of ever getting to that 600,000 is probably minimal, but it really puts the onus on the developers of the base to ultimately bring in that MWRA solution, and it's at their cost. We've got a meeting coming up with the MWRA, myself, just town staff, with the MWRA. We don't have a definitive number on what the tie-in, but it's been estimated that just the fee alone to tie into the MWRA is $15 million. That will be on the developer to pay that tie-in, yet we will have access as a town to MWRA water to spur further growth and eliminate this threat we have of continued water bans. So we think it's a good agreement for the town. Some people who may not know all the details are complaining a little bit because part of the agreement in exchange for the $15 million fee and the infrastructure work to upgrade the sewer system and water delivery system in town is going to be borne by the developers. In exchange for that, we waive an outstanding bill that was negotiated through existing prior agreements. So there's a water mitigation, sewer mitigation fee that will be waived that's a little over $1 million in exchange for that $15 million plus $6 to $8 million in infrastructure improvements. So we think it's a good agreement. We'll have more details once we have something to, and as a courtesy, under the charter, we don't need to have the council approve this, but as a courtesy to the council, we're putting it before them once we have a final draft. And hopefully that will help spur some more development that will lead to this commercial the kind of commercial tenants that we are trying to attract to the base, like ProDrive that was announced yesterday.
Two quick follow-ups. Number one is I think it's smart you guys put in those benchmarks, needless to say, so that there's checks and balances counted as far as the access to the water.
It's a good point. In the original draft that we had pretty much gotten ready to sign off on, I went home that night and I said, there's an element of discomfort that the potential exists within that 5-year window that you could get to the 600,000 gallons a day, which under DEP, under state regulations, it's within our safe yield. We're allowed to do that.
Dynamite.
But you drive by Whitman's Pond, or you drive by Great Pond, and you see, as a result of this drought, it's a little bit unnerving, and I wanted that additional safeguard in there.
Yep. My question is, and you said that I think there's a lot of misinformation when people start talking about these things because you think you know something, but it might not be right. And I don't know if you can even answer this, but as a general rule, what uses more water? Is it a residential development or a commercial development, or is it pretty much a 50-50
Well, it depends
trade-off?
on, that's a great question. It depends on what the commercial development is. You have some types of manufacturing that use little. You have others that use a ton.
Okay, so it's a real variable.
It's a case-by-case basis, really.
Yeah, that's good.
I think ProDrive's use is moderate.
Okay.
Very moderate. And, people complain about, it's funny because, first of all, it's an us against them mentality in this town sometimes. And the fact is, Union Point is another Weymouth neighborhood. Those are Weymouth residents that pay Weymouth taxes. In fact, they pay a premium in some cases. They pay a premium for their water right now. They pay a higher rate. They pay a higher rate for their water than we do outside of the Union Point neighborhood. And there's going to be tremendous benefit from the build-out up there for this town long term. So addressing the water situation in this agreement benefits, yes, the people at Union Point, but the way the deal is structured, it's going to benefit residents of Weymouth, because we're going to be, regardless, this town is going to be under stress. A lot of towns around here are, especially if the weather patterns continue the way the global warming people tell us it's going to continue. And in fact, the entire build-out right now at Union Point is not the town's, even if you were going to look at Union Point collectively, it's not the biggest water user in town. The biggest water user is South Shore Hospital.
Oh,
and the recent,
whoa! Now that's a fun fact.
And the recent expansion at South Shore Hospital, we haven't heard one person raise that issue. But for some reason, we single out Union Point.
Wow! So I wouldn't have put South Shore Hospital in the top 10 in this town if you asked me to list.
But I think if you pull this tape out and look at this show, or some of the other news reports about this issue 5 years from now, I think we're gonna realize that some of the fears were misplaced.
No.
And if we hit these goals in this agreement.
Yeah. Well, it looks like they're on track down there, and obviously there's a lot of folks taking shots at them. There's a lot of folks saying they've been a great neighbor and they're doing a great job.
I'm not happy with everything they do, and sometimes there's a level of trust you worry about, but we try to focus on, in our dealings with L-Star and any of the other people who have developed it at Union Point, we try to focus from our perspective what's best for the town, and not worry about accommodating developers, but what's best for the town.
All right, well, stay tuned, as we say here at Ask the Mayor. Don't forget, if you have any questions, these are all great ones, please send them in via askmayorbob@gmail.com. That's probably the easiest way to reach us. So, of course, you can stop either one of us when we're wandering down the roads. Bob, we got a different one. Speaking about being on the roads, Mayor Bob, could you please let the taxpayers know why the I'm sorry, I threw that out and I should not have. Should I continue? I'm sorry.
Maybe they can use the Mr. X blip, but I think Jim brought this.
Okay, yeah, they're going to help us.
That's okay.
Thank you.
So
Excellent.
what happened on this question, I'll tell the folks. Jimmy brought this to my attention just before we went on and said,
submitted, but
he says, I have an atom bomb.
Yeah,
and I said, what is it? You better brief me on the atom bomb question. And I said, no, I'm happy to answer it. I just don't think that we should single out a particular individual, because I want to give a more general answer to this. So.
And as you've now encouraged me to be more of a citizen's
and
advocate.
I know they have the Mr. X bleep thing.
I support,
we can call this one Mr. Y.
But I do support, in lieu of the fact that this one has kind of come in out of the blue and you don't know, again, what you don't know,
Right.
I think it's fair that Bob has asked us to leave this relatively anonymous. But it is on point, because I think while we're
No, this is a good question.
Because you'll see this from time to time, I think, in your own, and you might think, geez, what is going on with this thing? So here's the question. Mayor Bob, could you please let the taxpayers know why ex-director is permitted to do his shopping with a town-provided vehicle on a Sunday morning at Walmart? He was not working as I followed him, and he did not go to the blankety-blank garage or to any sites in Weymouth. Thank you, and I look forward to your response. And he actually included a photo of the vehicle just to make sure that we were clear on who that he's referring to. But who knows? So your turn.
Well, the citizen spy, I wish he had taken an inventory to tell us what the individual in question actually purchased that day, too. But this is a very good question, and actually it helps me, because one of the things that I've failed to do or neglected to do or hadn't thought of really until this question was taking a look to see if the town has a vehicle policy, and if it does, what the policy is. I'm not even sure if we even have one.
Right.
This case in question, it's a department head who is of kind of emergency nature.
I would agree.
And you know, I think it's legitimate staff person to have a car at his disposal at all times, without question. One of the things as a citizen that used to bother me and still does bother me, you see these reports like, you know, how many state employees have a car? Or I'd be driving home and, you know, you see a T car, you know, heading down
Sure.
Route 3 to Plymouth or something. And it's something I'm very concerned about. As a result of this question, we're going to determine if we actually have a policy, and if we don't, we're going to have a policy, get an inventory on who takes cars home. And the other thing as part of this that I actually had thought of recently that we're going to tie into this is I observed a couple of town vehicles that have no markings and no town seal, which I don't think is proper. They might be newer in nature, but all town vehicles absolutely should have some indication of the fact that it's a town vehicle, if not what town department it is. So it's something we're going to look at, and the gentleman raises a legitimate point on what's appropriate, what isn't appropriate, and we're definitely going to take a look at it, without doubt.
In this particular case, I have to agree with Bob relative to the department. As now we know, it's the type of department I would fully support them having a vehicle 24/7.
Oh, no, this particular individual is on call 24/7. I've actually been out in the field with him on emergencies in the middle of the night that he's had to respond to.
And I've literally seen him in the last 7 months myself on a Sunday
working. Now, where do you draw
working.
the line? I mean, to be doing personal errands, is that legitimate? It may not be in most cases, if not all.
Well, but it might be the same as seeing a cop getting a cup of coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, you know, they could be their break or their lunch or whatever, and automatically
Well,
start.
this is the type of person that, let's say he's doing that errand and gets the call. Do you want that person driving home, swapping out his vehicle, or do you want him to go directly from the errand that he was doing to respond to a town emergency? That's the question. And I don't have the answer for that one, but I definitely believe that we need to look at the entire town vehicle policy pronto, because it's something that, quite frankly, I hadn't thought of since I came in January.
Yeah, no, it's definitely well worth looking into, and maybe we can follow up on that as we move down the line.
And I don't want to see town vehicles around without any markings anymore either. That's not. I don't think that's appropriate, unless it's an undercover detective on the police department.
You could try to do that episode of Undercover Mayor, man, or Undercover Boss, perhaps, and put on a little disguise. And
that's a horrible show, by the way. That is the most bogus, ridiculous. That show's absurd.
Well,
it's absurd. Do you actually watch that?
I from time to time when you're flipping through the channels, but I'm always amazed that the people don't recognize, you know, Colonel Sanders.
It was interesting. It was interesting. Oh yeah, and why is there a camera on me, by the way, exactly, with this guy with the fake beard? It was pretty good. I did watch the first episode or two, but it's just hokey. It's the same formula every show.
We're giving you guys programming ideas to our WETC fans here. We just got thumbs down, I think, on that one. Okay. Well, listen, I'm going to stop laughing because, of course, a very serious issue in the town is being inquired about by Jason Thayer. And Jason has written it to us before with some musical-related questions, but this one's definitely a lot more serious. Hi, Mayor and Jim Melody. Great show. My question is this. The opiate crisis remains at the max, or so it seems. Is there a plan to try to contain and fix this? I know newly elected State Senator Patrick O'Connor is spearheading a variety of efforts. What is Weymouth's part? And Mayor, on a positive note, he's high on the job you've done so far, and he's glad he campaigned for you and helped support you as well. So thank you, Jason. And Bob, tough question, as we know.
Yeah, it's this has hit a lot of people on a personal level, and since our last taping, it's hit me with and impacted someone that a young man that I've employed in the past, who's a great guy, one of the more hardworking people of his age group, and has now been caught up in this. And fortunately, he's got some people trying to help him, and I'm one of those people trying to help him. But this is just so incredibly widespread. If any of us had any magical answers, certainly we would employ them. There are things beyond the ability of a mayor or a concerned legislator like Senator O'Connor, and even the governor, who's really focused on this issue. There are things beyond his control. I think the governor has had the right approach. We support him in bringing some focus, not just on treatment, which everybody talks about, but in my opinion, I don't think we're tough enough on dealers, number one. Number two, the prevalence of the prescription drugs that get out into the marketplace or into the ability for kids to get them is just unbelievable. And I know the governor's talked about that a lot and focused on that. From my own experience, having been injured recently, as everybody knows, I was scraped up off the ball field and hauled into an ambulance. On the ambulance ride, on the arrival in the emergency room, later on that evening in the hospital room, and then with a prescription the next day, I was offered oxycodone 4 times. And I said, I don't even want, even though I was in some pain the next day, I said, I don't even want to go down that road. But they kept offering it. I mean, what part of no don't you guys get? I don't want it. I don't want it around me. I don't want to see it. I don't even want to take the risk that somehow, if I have a compulsive personality, that somehow I'm in the clutches of that, even if that's, So I think, do I have any magical answers? No. We're trying to use all the town departments as resources. We've had a number of meetings that we're trying to collectively see what we can come up with. I think the police department in this town do a great job. Sometimes I know they probably feel like they're, fingers in the dike, but we try to focus on this as best we can and do what we can at the local level. But I think that there's a big onus on the drug companies, and I don't think that the federal level has been enough to stem that prevalence of these drugs getting out there. And that's part of the gateway. This whole, and I'm a libertarian at heart, and this has kind of also affected my thinking on the legalization of marijuana issue, because I'm starting to believe, and I'm going to take a lot of heat for this, but in some cases, for some people, I do think that marijuana has served as a gateway to harder drugs. And the anecdote I just told about the person I know, that is what I've seen in that case. So it's a great question. No magical answers. That's kind of my worldview of the situation. And
it's distressing. You read about it, you see it. I don't think people realize. I think we had close to 50 ODs in this town last year, the calendar year, did we not? And if you were
on a pace. I forget the number last year. We're certainly on a pace to reach that again.
And if you were to ask me, I think that doesn't get publicized, and I appreciate the reason why, but if you were to ask me, that was some information that came my way within the last couple months, I probably would have said 5 overdose deaths last year. I had no idea.
What was the community in Ohio that just published the photo that went viral of the 4-year-old in the car seat, in the back seat, with the grandmother and the grandmother's boyfriend, who were, I think, like mid to late 40s or somewhere around 50, passed out in the car. I guess what had happened was the grandmother was ill and the boyfriend was taken her to the hospital. She was probably overdosing, and he OD'd on the way to the hospital. and the two of them were just sitting in the car. It was the most grotesque picture you'd ever seen.
Yikes.
My heart cried for that 4-year-old kid, but we're leaving wreckage everywhere as a result of this scourge. It's insane.
If we can hit the suppliers too, like you said, the folks who are dealing it, man, we got to be harder on those folks
I heard
too.
the
I
theory
think
recently that with the legalization of marijuana in a number of states and the medical marijuana, that the money has kind of been taken away from suppliers, growers, dealers, etc. And now that's why they've turned their attention to some of the synthetic drugs, because some of the market's been taken away on the marijuana. So.
Wow. Well, listen, tough subject to wrap up the show on, but once again, we appreciate everybody tuning in. We appreciate the feedback, the questions that come our way. I know I speak for Mayor Bob when I say thanks so much to everybody at WETC and all the viewers. And all I guess we can say at this point is stay tuned for I Dream of Jeannie. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
If you have a question, please email the mayor at askmayorbob@gmail.com. That's askmayorbob@gmail.com. Maybe your question will be answered on the next episode of Ask the Mayor.